going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit more of like not really a rant, but kind of just, I would say like the part one of my first vlog. But obviously, before I talk about what I'm going to be doing in the future, I think it is important to kind of touch a little bit on the past and kind of like my background, where I'm coming from, to kind of catch you guys up of where I'm at this point. So way back, many years ago, I was always a pretty athletic kid. I played many seasons of basketball, even though I'm kind of short. I'm like 5'10", obviously, to be super competitive in basketball. Obviously, height is a huge factor. I had played about 4 seasons of baseball, got disinterested when I started playing football, played like a season of Pop Warner, ended up getting like a super duper bad concussion. Actually not football related. I got it skateboarding, funny enough. So I wasn't cleared to play sports for like a year. And then I actually ended up picking up football in high school as a sophomore once I was cleared. Played 3 years in high school. But then after, I was a receiver. So I was fast. I was pretty skinny. I'll see if I can actually find. I think I do have a picture of the last day of football season. I'll throw it on screen right here so you guys can take a good little look at that. I was same height, 5'10". I think I weighed like 148. I was like sub 150. Super duper skinny. Obviously was not the biggest kid on the team. Was nowhere near the strongest. I always had like some type of like foundational strength just from my legs. I think during football when we like tested our max, I think the most I ever squatted was like 3 plates, which isn't bad, considering my weight was pretty light. Obviously, it's like double my body weight. But why did I get started in like this whole fitness journey, weightlifting, powerlifting? I mean, it did initially stem from some, my own personal mental insecurities about my, how I looked. But I would say a lot of that was actually compounded on, situations with women, right? I'm sure you guys know where I'm going with this. When you're younger and you kind of get stomped on a little bit emotionally, something just snaps in your head, and I remember it like it was yesterday. Something happens to you a little bit, traumatic, you didn't see coming. It just twinges you a little bit, crushes your heart, and next thing you know, you're just on a freaking iron rampage, and you could really develop a lot of momentum this way, right? I know it's kind of like a very stereotype, how do you get gains? You just get your heart broken, stuff like that. But there is a lot of truth in that, and it really can give you a lot of like deep emotional motivation to continue that activity. And in the beginning, it's almost like a coping mechanism, right? And then obviously the physical changes going forward are kind of just like a positive side effect of it. But I mean, come on, what young kid doesn't want to be jacked, right? And this is back in like 2015 time frame. So social media is starting to get pretty popular. Instagram's kind of popping off. You've seen a lot of influencers, and this is like back in the Jeff Side days, right? Everyone wants to be like super aesthetic, but I think for me, at least my personal motivation, it was definitely a combination of just like being a little bit heartbroken, but also wanting to change myself for the better, and I saw it as a very good outlet and opportunity. And even before like football season was over, I was trying to put on size for maybe a year. So like around 2014, I was trying to put on some size, going to the gym recreationally outside of like football season. I did play for like an A class high school, so football season is basically like year round. you start training in like January. So we were doing weights and lifting, all that type of stuff, and I could just never put on size. I mean, obviously my genetic predisposition, I was like a little bit more of an ectomorph. So I was pretty lean. Um, I was. I have kind of like lengthy limbs. Like my arms have like monkey arms, and I have like very long legs compared to my torso. So it was always kind of hard for me to fill that out. And you know, basically that in combination with like my underlying genetics, in combination with obviously football is a lot of running, it's a lot of cardio. So I found it extremely difficult to put on weight. I was that kind of typical skinny fat kid. But fast forward, football season's over. I kind of get this, get bit by the iron bug, so to speak. And I think I started doing like 3 days a week. And I was just doing like full body, mainly arms, just total like gym bro workouts. Didn't really have an idea of what I was doing. I mean, I had some good knowledge because, we would lift with the football team pretty regularly. So I had good knowledge of like the major lifts. But as far as like programming and diet and nutrition and all that, I was like completely out the window at this time. I was just kind of like doing whatever, like throwing shit on the wall and just kind of seeing what stuck. And surprise, surprise, maybe about 3 months in, I just started really putting on weight. And I mean, because initially, like the first 2 months, I barely seen like any results. I was getting stronger, but I wasn't really like putting on any muscle size. So then, you do what most kids do, these days, and even a little bit back then. Went on YouTube, started, basically scouring for information, and I took the approach of basically eat the, what's that, like people say the whole diet, whole chicken, whole pizza. I pretty much went ballistic and was eating thousands of calories a day, and obviously I blew up, but I also got quite fat from that, pretty soggy looking, and I was just like, I looked like a little D-ball gangster. But keep in mind, I was natural. I was not taking any substances. I was just basically overeating like ton of calories. And of course, by the time I because football season ends in about December-ish, depending on if you like go to playoffs or whatever. By the time I ended high school, I put like 45 pounds on my bench. I gained like 30 pounds. I mean, I just blew up. And of course, a lot of, substance accusations came from like people in my school. And even my old weightlifting coach was like tripping out. She totally thought, she's like, you're on something. I'm like, I swear I'm not. But, she didn't really believe me back then. But as far as, after that, I never really took my foot off the gas. I mean, there was obviously a lot of adversity the following couple years, but after finishing high school, I kind of kept the ball rolling with the whole fitness journey. And once I was in college, I met some good buddies. I mean, I made a lot of connections at the gym. A lot of older guys, a lot of younger guys, and I ended up making a pretty good connection with one of my younger buddies. And we decided to compete together in 2018. So this is a few years after high school. And little tip for you guys: do not compete when you're doing finals for college, because when you are in those lower body fat percentages, you can't focus on shit. I mean, you're like phasing out, especially in maybe the last 4 weeks. It's like you're in dream state. Your carbs are so low, and obviously your brain runs on glucose, so you're just like fogging through every fucking class basically. And I remember doing finals, and I'm just like, I can't even focus on this right now. Miraculously, I passed all my classes with pretty good grades. So that was that was good. But yeah, highly do not recommend. I'll throw a picture of what I probably like my around the peak of my physique. Unfortunately, I don't have any good stage pics. I didn't want to pay for them at the time because I just thought I looked like dog shit. But I'll throw a pic up of kind of like peak physique of what I looked like in 2018. And then, kind of like rolling into after that, um, obviously post comp, I did a lot of refeeding and I really blew up and I started to put on a lot of really good size and I started to kind of focus on my strength and getting my strength up. I did, I don't know if you guys have heard of barbell medicine, but I did hop on a barbell medicine powerlifting program. I did that with one of my buddies as well, and man, I never been on a bracketed program like that. I mean, I've kind of screwed around with, like, I don't know if you guys heard of Small Off, but it was like a Russian, super old school, like rudimentary, brutal, just disgusting volume. I mean, it was like a squat every day kind of program. I think it's called Small Off, and I tried that before. It did work. It's kind of like overload volume training, but there was some type of cyclical up and down with the weight. I did try that in the past, but I never was on like a fully programmed, regimented powerlifting program. But I mean, in retrospect, hindsight's 2020. Most powerlifting programs are relatively simple with the mechanism, right? You are overloading, deloading, overloading, deloading, in this kind of wave pattern, right? Obviously, you can't lift heavy every single day. You need to give time for your ligaments, joints, the micro fractures in your bones to heal. So basically, if you have some type of programming with the like volume fluctuation along with like rep fluctuation over a consistent time frame, I mean, you are going to get stronger, right? You're slowly building progressive overload as time is progressing. You're going to see results no matter what, unless you're have some other type of limitation that's external from your training factors, as far as like training goes, not like bodily function, hormones, all that type of stuff. Powerlifting brackets are super simple, right? But I never was on a rudimentary program where I was like keeping track of my numbers and following through. So I did like 8 weeks. I think it's an 8-week program, and I saw like a lot of really good results. I was like almost the strongest ever after this program. I'm not gonna say ever, but really close to some of my biggest lifts, especially for like bench and stuff like that. But unfortunately, um, you know, you kind of hit with some adversity, right? Some things you never see coming. Obviously, around this time, it was kind of obviously we're fast forward a couple years. At this time, um, COVID happens, right? A little pandemic, and all the gyms. Unfortunately, I do live in a state where it was kind of sus. We'll just chalk it up as that. And all the gyms shut down. They shut down twice. They reopened briefly for like a month, and they shut back down. I did not have access to high quality gym equipment. Obviously, I know that's like not really an excuse, but I did have some dumbbells and some things in my house, and like resistant bands, and was trying to stay as active as possible during this time. But just like everyone, I think I caught the COVID-19 easily, maybe 20. So I really I didn't gain a ton of weight at that time, but I did get real soggy, like real flabby, real soft looking, just because I wasn't lifting heavy. Lifting heavy just gives you a different look. You look harder, you look fuller when you're lifting heavy a lot. And obviously, I didn't have access to a lot of weight, so that kind of went to the shitter. And of course, once all the gyms opened back up, started getting into it, that's when I really my body really had a time to recover. And then that's when I really started pushing a lot of weight. But just like anything, got hit with some more adversity, right? In, I believe it was like November of 2021, on my way to the gym to hit arms, ironically. And I actually get hit by a drunk driver, and I broke my arm. I broke my left non-dominant arm. I'll actually throw a picture of the break up here. So that was definitely a little bit unexpected and kind of threw me a curveball because right before this time, like I mentioned, I was getting pretty strong, right? My body got to recover after COVID, and I once I returned back to the gym, I mean, I was just like just getting stronger like every week, and I was hitting some pretty big numbers. I was actually getting ready to sign up to do a local powerlifting meet just because I already competed in men's physique, right? I did like men's open, whatever, and I liked it. There was a lot of benefits from it. I'm actually going to be making a follow up video just on my whole like competing experience, kind of like what it taught me. But I kind of wanted to try something new, right? And I was getting pretty strong, and I wanted to compete in powerlifting. So I started doing some research in my given area, and I was going to do, I think, USPA. They do state records, because I think USPL, they don't do state, it's only like national and world records. So I was kind of looking, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of within shooting distance of, taking a state record potentially. So I was kind of gearing myself up for that, and then boom, snap my arm. So obviously that's not going to be conducive to breaking any records, right? So that kind of did set me back a little bit. And subsequently, the following April, so obviously break my arm. There's not really much I can do in the beginning, just because when I would try to like even work out my legs, just like the swelling in the arm was just like pulsating. But once I got cleared from my doctor, and I kind of eased back into it, and then I started lifting, and now things are starting to snowball, right, from not lifting upper body. And I actually hit my all-time heaviest weight in the following year in 2022, like maybe like the end of April going into May. I think I weighed in at almost 240. So I was like 238, and I'll throw a pic up here. I mean, I was just fucking fat as shit. And I remember one day, and at this time I didn't really care about my physique that much because I was just trying to regain my strength, right? And the easiest way to gain back strength is to add weight, right? I mean, weight moves weight. Everyone pretty much knows that. And so in my head, I wasn't really thinking about my weight so much. I'm just trying to get back to where I was so that I could potentially gear up for some some competition. But then again, when you're competing in powerlifting, a lot of people don't realize that weight matters, right? Because you're competing by weight class. And obviously, depending on your height and weight class and things like this, lifts it can be very, very competitive, even just like one more weight class up for you if you have to like fight. Like, for example, if you're on like a borderline and you have to like, just let's say drop 5 pounds to get into a weight class, if you have to compete in that heavier weight class, you might get, annihilated, right? It's very competitive. So I wasn't really thinking about my weight, but one day I'm, fat as shit, and I bend down to tie my shoes, and shit. I can barely reach my shoelaces because I'm just so bloated. And that's when something kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, man, I'm really letting myself go here, getting a little overboard with the forever bulk. So I decided to kind of take a little bit of massive action and kind of came up with a formulation plan of, okay, over the next year, I'm going to do basically a slow cut, or on the borderlines of a recomp at first. At first, my goal was to recomp, but in reality, it's more like a slow cut. I know there's a lot of like controversy over that terminology, recomposition, because I think in the beginning I definitely was recomping. I'll actually throw a pic up as well of a before and after shot. It was about a year difference in between these two photos. I think one was April 2022, and the next one was April 2023. So you can tell in that photo that I definitely did recomp my physique to some degree, but I do think I did lose some muscle as well. And that's where I'm kind of touching on the terminology recomp, is because recomping basically means you're losing fat and you're adding muscle. I did not really add any muscle. I mean, I might have added some in my arms and shoulders and maybe a smidge in my back, even though you can't really see my back here. But it's there when you're like, if you start off really, really fat and you're like an untrained individual, you can definitely recomp. Like you can lose fat and you can gain muscle tissue or like pure contractile tissue. It's totally possible, especially if you're an untrained individual, because you have a lot of newbie gains, and you can use those fat stores to basically propel your energy, right? And you can gain some tissue. But the problem is at this point, I'm already a very trained individual, right? I've basically been lifting this entire time with the hiatus of me getting injured. But I have a lot of those muscle nuclei that are sticking around in my muscle tissue. So I'm not really a newbie at this point, right? So I probably didn't really gain that much tissue at all. I was mainly maintaining the contractile tissue I have while losing fat extremely slowly. And that's usually the best strategy possible, especially like obviously I'm not on any exogenous substances. I'm just doing this completely natty. No fat burners, no nothing. Besides pre-workout and caffeine, that's pretty much it. It's just diet and exercise, and just taking it very slow, 1 millimeter at a time, right? Usually the best strategy to maximize how much contractile tissue you're actually holding on your frame, and it's also going to be better in the long run for just like your metabolic health, and then staying in homeostasis, right? Because your body doesn't like fast change. It wants to stay in homeostasis at all times. So at this point, I dropped probably to, I think that photo I'm about 200. So I dropped about 30 pounds-ish, give or take. Obviously, some of that's water weight, gut weight, bloat weight, whatever. But that was about a year ago, right? Little under a year ago. Now I'm slowing down my drop in weight. I believe I weighed in at like 195 about 2 weeks ago. And I'll post a physique update of what I'm looking like now, which is, I'll put it up right here so you guys can take a look. Obviously, I'm a little bit more, I know this is a different shot because it's like 3 different photos. But I'm definitely sucking up a little bit more, and I'm getting a little bit leaner. But I've only dropped about 5 pounds the past year. So I'm taking this as slow as possible so that I'm able to just lose the least amount of muscle I can while getting a little bit leaner. And then obviously my overall goal here is where, like, the question is, where am I going next, right? This is like my first kind of little vlog. Where am I going next? Well, obviously I kind of alluded that I want to compete in powerlifting. It's still something I haven't been able to do considering injury and all this adversity that's been going on. And, here we are in 2024, finally trimming up, getting back into it, back into a nice body weight range for me to actually be competitive. And I'm going to be starting up my programming soon for that. So I'm definitely looking forward to achieving my goals in that. Obviously, baby steps. Goal number 1 is to win a local meet. I don't really think I'm going to have a problem doing that, considering my numbers right now are pretty good. I'm benching maybe 315 for 5, no reps. I'm squatting like 500 for a double, just with a belt. And then I think I pulled like 545 for a triple at this body weight. So sitting decent at the moment, but obviously I'm excited to get back onto a more rudimentary training block for powerlifting, and kind of just see what my potential is, kind of see where am I going to struggle, but also where am I going to see the most results. Typically for me, my bench has always been pretty weak. I was actually stuck at 300 for like the longest time. I was stuck there for like almost a year. and before I finally broke past that plateau. But if you guys have any questions on that little journey, definitely drop a comment below. You guys can also shoot me an email at I think it's smartyfit.coaching@gmail.com. Yeah, guys, so definitely excited for some new vlog content coming up. But I'll still be posting some intermittent, just like topic-based videos coming up shortly. But thanks, guys, for watching. Appreciate it.